DoDCast. Today, Ricky Keeler chats with the voice of the Syracuse Chiefs, Kevin Brown. We start the interview with Ricky asking about takeaways from the slow start to their season.
From what has stood out to you so far about this season, whether it be how bad it's been for Syracuse?
Yeah. Mainly it's the starting pitching. The starting pitching has a collective ERA north of 6 this year, and it seems rather obvious to say it, but if your starting pitchers have an ERA of 6, and you're not, I don't know, the best 2 or 3 Colorado Rockies teams ever, you're going to have a tough season. Austin Voth has had a difficult year. Austin is hopefully soon to return. He's been on the disabled list for a bit of time. HE has not had the same year as last year. He was 3rd in the league in ERA. His release point's been a little bit different. His fastball has had a little bit more cut to it, a little bit different action, and he's still trying to figure out. A.J. Cole has had stretches where he's been great. He's pitching tonight. He's had stretches where he's been hit around. Last game out, he allowed 8 runs in 2 2/3 to start. Before it was 2 runs in 7 innings, and he looked terrific. So I think the lineup has been a little here and there. It's been set by some injuries. Brandon Snyder's been out for a few weeks now. Matt Skoll has been on the disabled list 3 separate times. Obviously, this team was expecting more from Brian Goodwin, more from Ryan Rayburn when he was brought in. The Nationals' position players' injuries have not helped in that respect. Trey Turner's gotten hurt a couple times. Adrian Sanchez had really played well offensively. The bullpen's been mostly pretty good. They've had a couple of tough stretches here and there that have ballooned the numbers, but they've been mostly pretty good. Wander Suero has been great. Austin Adams has been great. Trevor Gott's been terrific. Bill Kotz has been very reliable. Rafael Martin has been, for the most part, good. So it's really been the starting pitching and the lineup, and part of the lineup can definitely be attributed to injuries. The starting pitching is just, for the most part, it's been kind of a worst-case scenario year so far for a lot of these guys. Greg Ross has not pitched as well as he did in Double-A and A-ball last year. Honestly, with every starter, it's been a stretch or 2 or 3 of good performances. It's just been a lack of consistency, I think, more than anything.
When you bring up Austin Voth and his struggles this year, it strikes me how fast that his value has gone down, because it seemed like at this time last year we were talking about him making his debut over a guy like Lucas Giolito, and he'd be in the perfect spot to fill in with the Nats rotation problems at the back end they have now.
Yeah, he was terrific last year. I mean, 3rd in ERA. I think he was in the top 5 in both strikeouts and innings pitched. I have to double check. He certainly was in the top 5 in strikeouts last year, and in ERA he was 3rd. And the curveball was a really terrific pitch from last year, but he established the fastball. So much of it is the fastball command with him. He commands the fastball while he can go to the curveball. There were games where he'd throw the curveball probably, 30, 40 times over the course of a game, it seemed like. At 40 may be too high, but there were games where it did seem like every other pitch was a curveball, but he was commanding the fastball so well. He hasn't commanded the fastball quite as well this year, so he can't throw the curveball as much. You're not going to throw it when you're behind 2-0, 3-1, and that's hurt him. He's had times this year, I know that the Nationals have wanted to throw more changeups and work on that as an effective 3rd pitch. Obviously, if you're going to start in the big leagues, you have to throw 3 pitches unless you're a knuckleballer. But he's just, I mentioned this earlier, but he's just looking for that release point. The release point's been a little up and down with him. He's been on the temporary inactive and the disabled list. He's building arm strength back up. He was in Auburn, made a start there a couple of days ago. And, you hope that he finds the release point and finds the fastball because, you said it, he was in real consideration to go up last year. He was put on the 40-man roster this offseason. So now you're there. You're one step away. And if you look at, some of these prospect lists, your Baseball America, MLB type lists, he's up there. He's a pretty highly regarded pitcher. And I understand why from last year. He's just trying to find a consistent fastball, a consistent release point. Yeah, it's just been one of those sort of anything that can go wrong, will go wrong years so far. He's a really good kid. He's a smart pitcher. I think he thinks the game well. And I hope that he has a good couple of months left in him, because he's certainly too young to throw in the towel on. And obviously the performance last year was great, but we've seen a couple of reasons why it hasn't gone the same way this year.
Speaking of highly regarded pitchers, you guys, of course, got to watch Eric Fetty last night. You've seen him as both a starter and a reliever. How have you viewed how the organization has handled him this year, titling him in both roles?
Yeah. Well, he strikes me as somebody that's capable of doing it. I know there is concern anytime you flip roles for a pitcher. I think maybe no better example of this than Jabba Chamberlain, right? He was a starter, he was a reliever, he was a starter again, he was a reliever again, he was a starter again, he was a reliever again. This, to me, is not that. This is something that I think Eric can handle well and is handling well and has pitched well the last two times out. It limits the innings, which is nice, and it gives him experience in both roles. Now, the Nationals seem to have indicated that this was the plan all along, even though they didn't mention it when he was moved to the bullpen at first, but that's fine. Not everyone needs to publicly know their plans. That's up to them to decide. I think he pitched well as a reliever, and after one difficult start as a starting pitcher, he's really pitched well the last two times out. He was good yesterday. He was not getting many swings and misses, but he was generating a ton of ground balls, not many well-hit balls. And the start before that, again, just 3 innings, he's still building up stamina, but he was perfect. He had an awesome slider. He was throwing 96. He was touching 97. The changeup was good. I think the thing that most impressed me in relief, honestly, was the changeup. Because you hear about his fastball, and you hear about his slider, you hear about Bryce Harper calling it the best slider he's ever seen in high school. But the changeup is a really good pitch when he uses it. And if he can continue to figure that out, I think he'll be terrific. I've been very impressed with him. And, you know, the Nationals have the option now. I think it may end up being a smart move. He can throw 2 innings out of the bullpen. He can come in and get a batter. Or if Joe Ross is hurt and you want to go in that direction, maybe he can throw 6-7 innings for you at the end of the year. So I think if that was the plan all along, judging by the last 2 starts, I think it seems to be going well.
Yeah, looking at last night a little bit, because I got a chance to watch that game last night, a lot of 3-ball counts. So what really impressed me, you mentioned the changeup. It's that he doesn't give in to any hitters. Like, he constantly pounds the strike zone, and it's rare you have an outing where you have 61 pitches, you have 1 strikeout, but it says something to the fact that he threw that many in less than 4 innings, didn't walk anybody. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think at this point he could probably pick up a few more strikeouts if he went just a little more fastball, slider heavy. But you're right. It's smart of him to work on the changeup and to understand that it's about innings, hits, runs, walks, strikeouts here. It's about developing pitches, right? I mean, that's what we all say, that this level is about player development, as it should be, and results should matter, and learning how to get guys out should matter, and winning games should matter, and all that does. But if he doesn't pick up as many strikeouts, but he throws more changeups, and that pitch becomes a bigger weapon for him in the long run, I think that's great. So, yeah, I'm impressed with the way that he goes after hitters. I think there are 2 types of pitchers when you get into 3-ball counts and walk batters. There are the guys that are afraid to go after hitters, that are a little reticent to do it, and then there are the guys that just need to iron out a mechanic here and there and need to find consistency. He definitely does not strike me as a guy that's fearful of pitching to hitters, fearful of going inside, afraid of it. It's just sometimes he's behind 3-0, I think, because he misses a couple of spots and he's still working on consistency and command because he's in his 3rd professional year. But I like his mentality. I really do.
You bring up Joe Ross's injury, and the Nats have to figure out who's going to start on Tuesday. And one of the candidates that's been a surprise for the team that you've been calling is Edwin Jackson. His major league numbers haven't looked great last couple of years, but he's been throwing excellent for Syracuse so far.
Yeah, I can't speak to what he did in the majors, really, not having watched it much, but he has been great here. Command is his bugaboo at times. The walks are high, but he's been mostly fastball slider. He says I throw the kitchen sink. When we were talking about what pitches he throws, we had a nice sit down a couple of weeks ago. And yes and no. Yes, it's the kitchen sink, and that he does a lot of different things with the fastball. He can ride it in, he can cut it, he can sink the ball, but it's pretty much a fastball slider guy. And I guess that's always what he's been to an extent, and that's still basically what he's been if you lump a few different variations of the fastball together under fastball. The slider's been great. He throws a lot of sliders, and he didn't give a hit for 12-plus innings. He didn't give a run for 17, 18 in the third innings. I think it was 18 in the third ultimately until last time out. I'm definitely curious because you mentioned the numbers. The last couple of years, the numbers in the big leagues are obviously not great, but the numbers here have been good and the stuff has been good. It's just a matter of he does walk hitters. He does fall behind batters. And can you make enough pitches when you walk 3 or 4 guys in a game? So far he has. And so far he has picked up strikeouts and groundouts, and the sinker and the slider have been very good. Will that play in the big leagues? I hope so. I think he probably will get a chance. I think he deserves to get the chance based on what he's done here. He's certainly been the most deserving member of the starting staff over the past few turns. And I know it's been reported. I haven't talked to him about this. I know it's been reported that he has the August 1st opt-out. So my suspicion would be the Nationals have nothing to lose by trying it. They need a starting pitcher here with Ross on the DL, and I think they probably will.
Earlier in the season when Andrew Stevenson got called up, he struggled a lot, and over the last 30 games, he's an International League All-Star. He's now back to the top of the order after being to the bottom, like 9th even in a couple of games. What has been the difference in Andrew Stevenson's turnaround?
Man, what's been the difference? Not much. This seems really simple, but he hasn't said he's tweaked much in his swing, and Brian Dahlbach hasn't said he's tweaked much in his swing. And there's not much to notice in terms of that. I think he's just attacking pitchers a little bit more. I think he's just a little more confident. I think he's a cerebral guy. I think it just took him time to figure out the level, honestly. He was putting more balls in play, and he definitely was behind more pitches earlier than he is now, fouling a lot of pitches off to the left side as a left-handed batter, so he's behind quite a few pitches. I see him now pulling the ball more, attacking the ball more. I see him just taking more control of at-bats, having a plan. But there's not a noticeable difference in the swing, to be honest with you. It's just what seems like a different approach mentally, really. And he's been awesome over the last month. He's been as productive as anybody in the lineup. He's on base every game. I think he has a hit 20 of his last 21 now. And thankfully he's here. He was stuck in Washington the last couple of days. His first flight was canceled out of Seattle the day after the All-Star break, so he was not here in the first game after, and he did not make it back by the game yesterday. So thankfully he is here, and he's going to hit leadoff again today.
When I turn on a Chiefs game, it feels like Wander Suero always throws strikes. Last night he gives up a 2-run homer, and he still throws 12 of 15 pitches for strikes. Do you think he's going to help the bullpen this year? Because I talked with somebody from Harrisburg, and it seems like at some point you get invited twice to spring training, not on the 40-man. You're doing something, right?
Yeah, obviously that's the question, is if you want Suero, what do you do on the 40-man? I'll say this much. He has been as impressive as anybody this year in the time he's been with the Chiefs. He's got 2+ pitches, I think. He's got a cut fastball that is excellent, and as good cut fastballs do, is effective against righties and lefties. And he has a really good curveball. It has good shape. It's not just a north to south pitch. It moves a little bit right to left as well. He throws strikes. He goes after hitters. He is not afraid. And I know that's been an issue in years past. I know his delivery has changed. And he throws more strikes because of it. He used to I've seen pictures, he used to stick his arm way up in the air, his front arm. It's a lot more compact now. I just love the way he pitches. I think he's really good. and it's up to the Nationals to figure out how they want to use him and what they want to do in terms of the 40-man, and if this is a guy they want. Obviously, they have bullpen decisions to make. He's absolutely put himself in a position to be considered. I think this is a breakout year for him with what he did in Double-A, and he's doing the same thing here. It's been fun to watch.
We talked about disappointments earlier, but who have been some of your biggest surprises this year?
Yeah. Well, Suero would be one, and Trevor Gott would be another out of the bullpen. Trevor was not consistent last year and was not necessarily the pitcher that we were hoping for after that Angels trade. He wasn't throwing quite as hard. He wasn't getting as many ground balls. He just didn't control the tempo the way he is now. He's working quicker. The fastball's a lot heavier. He's getting a ton of ground balls. I know he's up now, but the breaking ball's been excellent. He goes right after hitters. He's probably worked about as quickly as any reliever we have, which was not the case last year. I've been so impressed. He looks like a completely different guy. I've been really impressed with him. I'm happy he's back in the majors. He would be my biggest positive surprise. Outside of that, offensively, Brandon Snyder's been great. It's not a huge surprise because Brandon Snyder's it's just about everywhere in the major leagues. Irving Falou and Adrian Sanchez would be the other two. I don't think Adrian Sanchez was on anybody's radar at the start of this season as a potential major leaguer. He wasn't even in our media guide. He did not make the cut for the media guide player profiles because he had 2 weeks with the Chiefs last year and he did not hit well. And he was up within a week or so this year. He's hit for a little bit of power, which he had not done previously. He's pulled the ball with power. He's more of an opposite field hitter, so he's kept that approach to go the other way while pulling the ball. He's been a mostly reliable defender at 3 infield positions. And then Irving Falou has been terrific. He's played second, third, short. He's played a little right field even. I think Billy Gardner stuck him out there in a game, and he wouldn't hesitate to do it again if need be. He's had a bunch of big hits. He had a walk-off home run, which was the first for the team in 2 years. He had a game-winning home run in the 7th inning the next night. He's someone that's been around but hasn't always been a consistent offensive player. He's always been a versatile player. He's had some good years. But you never know at this level. You never know when at some point a player is going to go over the cliff, when the age is going to be, because it happens to everyone, when the age is going to be that your skills erode. And Irving Falou is 34 years old, and you see a lot of 34-year-olds that fall off at this level, and he's not. He's batted up and down in the lineup. He's moved around in the infield. He's hit well from the left and right sides at times. He was not somebody that was even a starter at the beginning of the year, and he's made himself into a pretty essential part of the lineup. So I've been impressed with those two, and he's been a great defensive player. I think he's probably been the Chiefs' best defensive infielder, Falou. He makes just about every play. He is terrific at making off-balance throws, spinning left, spinning right, fading away. I've just been really impressed with him. Good guy, well-respected. Same with Sanchez. So I would say those two and Gott have all been really pleasant surprises.
We talked about disappointments, and it feels like Pedro Severino, while he's been banged up and only played about 40 games, after all what he did last year, especially in the playoffs, stepping up when Wilson Ramos went down, his numbers this year are not really good. Are you seeing a difference between last year and this year, or is it all basically he just hasn't been healthy this year?
That's definitely part of it. And he's back in the lineup today for the first time in about a month. So I'm hopeful that there's a turnaround in story for him. I will say that Pedro was swinging the bat better in the last few weeks. He took a couple of games off in May, and he was working with Troy Gingrich, who was in town, a Chiefs old hitting coach who's now the hitting coordinator for Washington, and he was working on being a little bit quieter, keeping the front shoulder in, not pulling off the ball quite as much, simplifying the swing. And the at-bats were definitely better in the months after that, and then he got hurt. It's been some nerve issues with the right hand, with one of the fingers on the right hand, which is, for a catcher in particular, not a fun injury to have. So health has to do with some of it. I've thought about this too. You look at the numbers, you wonder, why isn't he hitting better? He is only 23, and he was so good at the end of the season last year that I think it really opened some eyes. I mean, he had a hit off Kershaw in the playoffs. Obviously, it was great when Ramos went out, but that was a couple of terrific weeks in the big leagues. Some players hit better in the big leagues than AAA too. I mean, I don't have a great explanation for that other than to say that some guys are better on the bigger stages, and maybe he's one of those. But I think health has something to do with it, and I do think he was swinging the bat better before he got hurt, after the little session he had with Troy. So I'm hopeful that didn't completely stunt his progress. But he's still athletic. He's had a better season defensively, and he was doing some things well, just the consistency at the plate obviously has not been there.
How would you describe Billy Gardner Jr. as a manager?
I'd call him a player's manager. He's not someone that overmanages the game. He is not someone that makes a move for the sake of saying, I did something. He's okay if he doesn't do something. And win or lose, he's not going to manage based on outside perceptions. We know it. There are some managers that bring in a righty for a righty and then a lefty for a lefty and another righty, bunt, pinch hit, pinch run to a maddening degree sometimes. And he is not that guy. His players like him and respect him for that. I think that's been consistent with the 4 years of teams we've had, some good, some not so good. They've all respected Billy. And it's funny, the Manager of the Year award, to me, usually seems to go to the manager whose team outperforms expectations or historically exceeds expectations. He won the Manager of the Year award in 2014. The Chiefs hadn't been good in a long time, and they were the best team in the league, and they had a loaded roster, and they haven't been nearly that good since. I don't think he's gotten worse as a manager. I just think it's the players around him, but he doesn't overmanage the game. His teams are not, top 1, 2, 3 in the league and sacrifice butts because he's always calling for him. Guys can run on their own if they so choose. Guys can bunt on their own if they so choose. And his players all really respect him. He fights for his players. If he doesn't like a call, he's going to go out and talk with the umpires about the call. So I like Billy a lot. I have a lot of respect for him. It's a tough field, I think, if you haven't played in the major leagues, right? There aren't a lot of managers that only played a couple of years of minor league ball that make it to the big leagues. And I understand that as a perception. I don't think it's fair. And I'd like Billy to be talked about because he's been an excellent minor league manager, and I think if you talk to any of his teams over the year, he helps develop guys. He lets guys play. Now, will he get a shot at the major leagues? I mean, it's tough because major league teams seem to value managers that have played up there. And maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't. I don't think the speed of the game is that much different once you've been doing it for 20 years and 4 years in AAA and a lot of years in AA. So I'm still hopeful that Billy ends up on a major league coaching staff and at a major league dugout someday, even though he's been a minor league guy. I have a lot of respect for him. I know his players all do too, and I think if you talk to them to a man, they would say good things about him.
Is the lack of attention from Gardner?
I should be his agent, really. I'm pitching for him here.
Well, if you're his agent, let's go with this. Is the lack of attention he gets come from the fact that this farm system is not as strong as it once was, and he's in a division with the Yankees who built their system up, the Phillies, the Red Sox. It just seems like their systems are just in the prime moment right now.
The Twins too. Rochester's been terrific the last few years. Absolutely. the Chiefs suffer because the Nationals are so good, right? I mean, the Nationals are in win-now mode in a way. They recognize how short windows can be, and that's good. The Chiefs would have had Reynaldo Lopez and Lucas Giolito in the rotation this year, but the Nationals went out and got Adam Eaton. That's the reality of it when you have that good of a major league team. And the Yankees have certainly straddled the fence as well as anybody, although they are falling off in recent weeks considerably in the majors. The Phillies have a great farm system, and the Phillies are not very good up top. A lot of teams are like that. The Twins have had a good farm system the last few years and been up and down and not great at the major league level. Overachieved a couple of years ago, probably overachieving a little bit this year. It's hard to do both. And the Nationals have, I think, the consolidation of their talent at the lower levels. Robles, Soto, and Carter Kiebrough. So it's funny, you get managed, you get accolades when you have a good team as a coach. Like you can't win 15 more games with a good manager, though. Maybe you can win 5, but I don't think you can win 15. I don't think you can win enough to when the talent gap is that different because of the way different teams utilize different things at this point. There's only so much you can do. I don't think Billy's any better or worse of a manager than Dusty Watson at Lehigh Valley. The Phillies just totally rebuilt their team and stripped down and focused on young players.
Mm-hmm.
The Nationals haven't done that, and they're winning division titles for it.
That's right.
So everybody's happy. And so I think that's where you get lost in the shuffle.
You mentioned players that have had their call-ups this year. Well, you had your own sort of call-up this year to the big league level back in May when you got to call some Nats-Pirates games. What was the moment like for you personally when you found out that news, and how was the experience?
Well, thanks for asking. It was amazing. It was the most fun thing I've done in broadcasting, and it's one of the most fun things I've ever done, period. I found out that it might happen on January 30th. Oddly enough, I was in D.C. I was there for a basketball game at Howard University, and Dave Jagler sent me an email asking if I could call him later. So I did, and Dave proceeded to explain that Charlie was going to be missing a couple of games. His son graduated high school, his son Alex. And a few years back, Dave did a game solo because Charlie was out. He just didn't feel the necessity to do that again, and he wanted to give me the chance because he knew me a little bit. He knew I was in the system and knew the team well. He knew what an opportunity like this would be like, and it's one of the kindest things that anyone's ever done for me. Dave could have absolutely done the games by himself. He could have absolutely brought in somebody from D.C. He didn't even have to think about me, honest to goodness, but it's just an extraordinary thing that he did, and even if it's something that seems that simple, I will always be grateful for him. So he asked me then that last day in January, or I guess the second to last day. There's 31 days in January, I think. Yeah, there's 31. And he said, this is probably going to happen, but send me your stuff. So I sent him an inning from the Chiefs, and then we waited for that to be filtered down. A couple of months later, I got the official word that it was going to happen. The games itself were amazing. It's such a different visual, primarily. We were in Pittsburgh, and the press box at Pittsburgh is abnormally high up and far back. So it is at first difficult to discern whether a ball is hit on the ground or on a line and how far a fly ball will travel. And in this league, where there are smaller stadiums, we are obviously much closer and much lower at our height. So it took me a little while during batting practice. That was a main focus of the day, was just staring during batting practice and judging the flight paths of the ball off the bat, which is something that you might never think about, but was a real thing I needed to deal with. So once that was out of the way, honestly, and I got over a few butterflies, it just felt like slipping into an old baseball glove again. I mean, it was just doing radio. Different partner, but Dave couldn't have been more welcoming on the air. Could not have been a better partner to do those first couple of games with his knowledge, with his attempts to bring me into the broadcast, with his willingness to let me chime in when I had a point. He chimed in when he was on color, which was great. It felt more lived in a way. You know, I think Dave was a little worried at first about recognizing that this was an opportunity for me and not wanting to step all over my innings, and I appreciated that. But I said, look, let's make this a two-man show. I don't want this to just be about me coming in trying to do a tape. I want to have an actual broadcast and have a conversation like I normally do. So he was great. The games were just extraordinary fun. Everybody on the beat was terrific. Couldn't have been nicer to me. It was good to see some old friends like that Trey Turner and Tanner Roark, who I hadn't seen in a few years, and Blake Trinan. And great to catch up with some of our players that ended up there. Brian Goodwin. And I walked into the clubhouse the second day, and the first person I saw was Matt Grace, who I had just left in Syracuse. So I said, hey, what are you doing here? And he said, what are you doing here? It was just extraordinary fun. It's the thrill of my broadcasting life so far. And, you know, I just, in a way, I can't believe I got to do it. And I hope I get to do it again in some capacity. But everyone with the Nats was just first class. And they actually, I came home about a month ago. I live in Brooklyn in the off season. And and this was on one of our off days. And there was a box there addressed to me from the Nationals. And I wasn't expecting anything. So I opened the box, and there was just all this random Nationals memorabilia in there. Wow. They sent a Max Scherzer snow globe, a Bryce Harper bobblehead, a Nats drawstring bag, some T-shirts, plush racing president Teddy Roosevelt toy. I mean, it was awesome. No one had told me they were going to do that. I didn't expect it. But I came home to this big box of Nats memorabilia. And that was a little thing, but that tells me the character of the people in the organization. Because all I did was jump in for 2 games. And that was just extraordinarily kind of them. And my girlfriend's not a huge baseball fan, but she loves the Max Scherzer snow globe. So that will be displayed at Christmas, and I will try to display the other things wherever I can.
Real quickly before I ask you my last question,
sure.
Matt Grace got his first save last night. It seems like you followed his career the last couple of years. I don't think we've seen Matt Grace pitch as well in the past as we're seeing him pitch in the majors right now.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's tough when you're in the spot that he was the last couple of years, where you're the 8th guy or the 9th guy, right? You're not getting as consistent of innings. He's been really for a month now, maybe more. He's been a part of the bullpen. He's been a piece. He's not just been, all right, here are the main bullpen pieces, and then here's this guy who's kind of outside the mix. He's just up for a few days. He's in it now, particularly with Sammy Solis back here. And whenever he pitched consistently with the Chiefs, he's always been good. The sinker's terrific, and he gets so many ground balls, and he's starting to strike out more batters this year. So I'm not surprised in that once he started to become an actual piece of the bullpen and not just that AAA fringe guy who's up to provide coverage sometimes, that he's pitched well. I'm happy for him. It was a neat little milestone to see him getting out and close the game yesterday.
So for those who haven't been to a Chiefs game, what's the best part about the Chiefs experience for you?
We have genuine fun. I mean, we have fun every inning. Our general manager, Jason Smorrell, is a walking 5-hour energy drink. He must never sleep. I believe he does. he's screaming on the field before every game. He's dressing up in ridiculous outfits. He's talking to every fan. He sets the tone. It's his fourth year, and honest to goodness, he could have been a carnival barker or a circus leader in another life. He has so much energy and so much enthusiasm. I don't think there's anybody better to run the Chiefs than him. So it starts there. I just think it's a fun game day experience, which, to an extent I'm paying attention to. Obviously, we're on the radio doing our thing, but there are games in between the innings. Our music guy, our music guru, who goes by the name of DJ Double Play, is a lot of fun. He'll play songs for the opposing players based on their names or based on certain personal things. Yesterday, Kyle Kendrick was pitching. His wife was a Survivor contestant, so he played the Survivor theme when Kendrick came out to pitch for Pawtucket. It's a loose atmosphere, and it wasn't always that way. It is now with Jason at the top. There are a lot of smiles, and I don't see many people that come to a game and don't leave with a smile. And you have to do that as a front office because you never know what the product of the field is going to be, right? And that's the minor leagues. 3 years ago, the Chiefs were the best team in AAA. This year, right now they're the worst team statistically in the IL record-wise. So you have to control what you can control. And as a minor league front office, you cannot control the product on the field. You have to have fun off it. And not everyone makes that a priority, and this staff does. And I genuinely enjoy coming to the ballpark because of it.
Well, Kevin, congratulations on all the personal success you've had. I enjoy listening to your games that you called with the Chiefs. Keep up the great work, and thanks for taking some time to talk with me today. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for calling.
We'd like to thank Kevin Brown for being on with us today. You can follow the Syracuse Chiefs on Twitter at SYR Chiefs Radio. You can follow us on Twitter at District on Deck. DistrictOnDeck.com is where you should read all of your favorite stuff about the Washington Nationals. Give us a like on Facebook and give this video a like and subscribe here on YouTube.